All right, now Mauro, looking ahead to UFC 197, we have the big rematch between John Jones and Daniel Cormier. What are your thoughts on this matchup? Who's taking the win with this one?
Well, it's always interesting when a couple of fighters rematch and see what happens in the sequel. John Jones, of course, defeated Daniel Cormier rather handily in their first meeting to retain the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship, only allowing one takedown by the former Olympic wrestler, which, if he can keep Cormier standing, as much as Cormier's striking has definitely matured and evolved working at American Kickboxing Academy, against a guy with the wingspan of John Jones, the speed, the youth, regardless of what has happened outside of the octagon, where he almost derailed his career with, the breaking the law and I think finding himself as a man and maybe maturing as a human being. You can't discount what John Jones does inside the octagon, one of the greatest fighters ever at his young age, and continuing to get better at the Jackson Winklejohn. I think it's a tough matchup for Daniel Cormier any way you look at it, because of the creative, innovative offense of John Jones and the fact that the size and that youth that is going to, I think, again, be a big factor in stopping Daniel Cormier's takedown attempts, where really Cormier has to try to find a way to get this to the ground, bullying him against the cage, and I don't think he can do it. And this is nothing not to discount what Daniel Cormier has already achieved in his career. I remember in Strikeforce, a revelation as a small heavyweight when he ragdolled Josh Barnett in the Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix, knocked out Antonio Bigfoot Silva, and we've seen what he's been able to do as a light heavyweight, despite the loss to Jones. A big win over Anthony Rumble Johnson, a big test, a big fight with Alexander Gustafsson. I just see this as a bad matchup for Cormier, and while I hate to make predictions, I think John Jones will emerge once again as the UFC heavyweight champion at UFC 197.
All right, now on to the topic of Bellator MMA. 2016, they're doing some big things. They're going to be breaking into the kickboxing world this year as well. In my opinion, they've got some very good fighters. They do some good fights, but lately they've been a little stuck on these gimmick fights, such as Hoist and Ken having a match and the Kimbo Dada fight, and they're bringing in great ratings, but they seem to be kind of damaging the reputation among hardcore fans, and I feel like even more casual fans are a little turned off by those matches, especially because of how they turned out.
The numbers don't reflect that. In fact, Bellator, according to my buddy at Wrestling Observer, Dave Meltzer, the ratings are up 45%, skewed by the record ratings that were drawn when Hoist Gracie fought Ken Shamrock, and the debacle that was Donna 5000 against Kimbo Slice. And while we hope that the sport may have, reached a level where those kinds of fights aren't necessary, and obviously still very much necessary when we're still driven by ratings, that Bellator is a television entity owned by Viacom. Scott Coker, who studied the Japanese form of promotion and did so successfully with Strikeforce, is doing whatever it takes to make Bellator a viable entity. And these fights, whether we like them or not, and again, I was involved in calling some, train wreck TV with fighting championships, and I think there is a place for those kinds of matchups. I don't know if you want to hang your hat on them, but I think Scott Coker is smart enough to know that, he wants to use these gimmick matches, as you put it, to hopefully elevate the profile of the rest of his roster, the young champions, the young fighters who are on their path to success. And yeah, I did not like what I saw, and I was definitely afraid that Donna 5000 would die in the cage at Bellator, and the fact that he's been in hospital for a long time just speaks to how ill-conceived all of that was. But if you are owned by a television company and the company's success is dictated by ratings, then you can't argue with the success of what Bellator has done with its tentpole shows. And I know that Scott Coker is a tremendous judge of talent. You look at the Strikeforce alum; they're now 5, I believe, who are UFC champions. I know that Scott Coker is one of the best promoters in the business, but he has to try to serve two masters, and that's ratings. Then you have a hardcore and other MMA fans, but I do see there's potential now with free agency becoming more of a thing, which is good, I think, for the overall health of the fighters' bank book anyway, giving them an opportunity to maybe, bid, have the companies bidding for their services. UFC and Bellator, we saw Benson Henderson jump ship, Matt Mitrione, UFC heavyweight just signed with Bellator. I I know Roy McDonald, I read, is contemplating exploring free agency, and why not? You have a short window of opportunity to be successful, especially in combat sports where an injury can happen at any time, and who, where you don't really want to subject yourself to the punishment that is innate in this form of athleticism and competition. And I always remember Bill Goldberg and Brock Lesnar even saying, you get in to get out. You get in, you make as much money as you can to better your family's future, your future. And with a sport like MMA or any form of combat sport, the physical toll that it takes, why would you want to extend that? So I like that the free agency is becoming more prominent with Bellator's, signing some big names from the UFC, and I think the sport of MMA needs a promotion like Bellator, and the health of the regional promotions that we feature on Access TV as part of the Access TV Fights series on Friday night. So I like what Bellator is doing in many ways, and while I kind of cringe at some of the fights that they headline with, I do understand the message of the madness, and it's borne out by the ratings. They're the record numbers for Bellator, and so that means we'll see it again.